Hi everybody. Today we're going to be doing chapter 9 out of the purchasing text, which is the optimal amount. Now, this chapter, when you go through it, it looks fairly complicated. It's one of those things that terrifies hospitality students and culinary students as there's actual math. But we're going to try to keep it really simple. This chapter covers several different approaches to ordering to get the proper amounts. Now, you got to imagine how difficult is it. You own a restaurant, you own a catering operation. How much do you order? And maybe you think that's a simple answer. Well, we sell 10 steaks a week, so we should order 10 steaks this week. And that's actually kind of one of the simpler methods, the PAR approach. But how many times have you been to a restaurant where you've ordered something and they say, oh, we've ran out of that? Conversely, there are times you'll be in a restaurant where we have a great sale on the cod tonight. You know why they have a great sale on the cod tonight? Is because somebody probably bought too much of it and they're trying to run it out. Anthony Bourdain always, made a funny joke about never order fish in a restaurant on Monday because it's all the stuff they got in the week before and they're trying to get rid of it on Monday. So this chapter is all about how to order the right amount, how to figure out what you're going to need. You can imagine why this is important, as I've just alluded to, and we talk about this more at the end. But if you don't have product, you can't make money. Simple as that. You've got to have the things that people are buying so you can turn around and make money. The other side of it is, if you have too much stuff, too many things on your shelves, that's things that are sitting there, they're not making you any money. It's money you could use for other things. So we're going to look at a couple different ways to figure out how much to buy here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is inventory turnover, a term you should know. And the inventory turnover is basically how quickly we turn over an item. In other words, how fast it goes from coming in on the dock to going out on the plate or being used in some way. Now, why is that important? As I said earlier, if you've got stuff that sits on your shelf for a long period of time, how much money is that making you? If it sits for months upon months to a year or more, you've paid for that. It's storage space you could use for something else. It's not making you any money. So we want a high inventory turnover. We want product coming in, we want to use it quickly, we want to get more in, and we want to just keep turning that. So things that sit on the shelf, bad. Things that move quickly, good. Now, as I mentioned before, there's several different approaches we can use to figure out how much to order. And the first and the simplest one is the PAR approach. A PAR is basically an average of what we want to keep on hand, or a set amount that we want to keep on hand. We use the example there of steaks. Say I sell 12 steaks a day, and I'm open 5 days a week, so I know that I'm going to need at least 60 steaks a week, right? So when I do my inventory, I go through on Friday, I see I have 10 steaks. I know I'm going to do 50 steaks a week, so I would know to order another 40 steaks. Simple as that. You go through and you make a PAR list that shows the amount you want to keep on hand of every single item. You do a weekly inventory. You match up how much you have with how much you think you should have to get through the week. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Now, there are some issues with that. One, you have to look at when do you order and when do your orders come in. So, for example, if you order always on Monday, but your food doesn't come in till Friday, what if you have something big happen in between on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? You've already put your order in. So you can have an issue there. Seasonality can change your PAR. You might sell more ribs in the summer than you do in the winter, things like that. Or special events that you have might affect your PAR list. It also requires you to do an inventory. And speaking personally, most people that I know, including myself, hate to do inventory. There are a lot of other things more fun to do than standing around and counting things on shelves. But if you're going to use the PAR approach, you've got to know what you've got on hand. Now, I'll throw another term out here that's important to know, and that's forecasting. Why is forecasting important, and what is it? Well, forecasting, first of all, is telling us what we've done to project what we should do in the future. So what we do is we take our list of menu items at the end of every day and we write down, what did we sell? We sold 5 hamburgers, we sold 10 cheeseburgers, we sold 15 orders of fries, we sold 2 pizzas, we sold 2 slices of apple pie, blah blah blah. And we write that down, we keep a record of it. And then we do that day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And what we find is, over a long period of time, and it's an extended period, these numbers that we're keeping will start to show us a pattern. And that pattern is what then we'll use to base further purchases on and to establish PARs. Now, if I wrote down my numbers, if I just open a new restaurant and I write down my numbers Monday through Friday, do you think that's going to tell us everything we need to know about how much we should order? Probably not. It's not long enough of a time period to establish a pattern. But if we do this for 6 months or a year, you'll see these patterns emerge, which are very stable, and then you can use those to base your PAR on. When you do a forecast sheet, you also have to make note, for example, if there is an anomaly and you have an incredibly bad week, maybe there were some weather issues, maybe there was tornado season and it was bad and people didn't come in, you make notes of that on your forecasting sheet. Conversely, if you have an amazing week, why are we doing so much business this week that's out of the norm? Maybe there's a convention in town, maybe for some other strange reason you ran a cheap anniversary special, but you make note on that. So I can't emphasize enough how important this forecasting is, because otherwise, and I have seen this in way too many places, if you don't know where you've been, you have no idea on where to go. And so keeping those records are important. So basically, with a PAR, very simple, find out what you're doing, figure out how much you need to have on any one time, and purchase accordingly. Pretty simple. Now, if you want to make it a little more complicated, well, we've got another approach, and that's called the Leveson approach. Now, this is where we get a little bit more math involved. This would be for a little bit bigger operations, also maybe operations that are doing some special events and some catering, all right? Because if you're doing a small mom and pop operation, you'll get into a pattern, you know what you're selling every week, you know what you should always have on those shelves every week. But say you're doing special events that are one-time events, or you're doing them only once every couple of months, things like that, then we need to be a little bit more precise. Now let me ask you this, have you ever been to a catered event where they ran low on food? Or have you gone to a restaurant buffet for that matter, and they're out of something? Oh, we just sold the last of it. Well, somebody there did not figure out how to order properly, or they were just trying to be cheap with it. So the Leveson approach tries to be a little bit more exact. There's some good examples in your book on that, and I'm going to keep this real light for here. But there's a couple of steps that we're gonna add to basically our PAR approach. First of all, forecasting, very important. We've got to have the data to be able to move forward with this, so we know how much we sell. And once we know how much we sell, it's good to do what we call a popularity index, also known as a menu mix. And basically what that is we're going to figure where at, of all the things we sell on our menu, where certain things lie. Because that way I have an idea roughly that I sell more steaks than I sell of chicken. I might sell X amount of pork chops a week compared to the lobster thermidor, whatever. That is going to give us an idea once again of how much we should be ordering of different products. We're going to rank their popularity. So there's a couple other terms in here, and there's portion factor and portion divider. It's part of the math. The example that we use in the book is we're buying 500 12-ounce steaks that have a yield of 80%. Right? What we mean by 80% yield, well, once we get the steaks in and do the trim, out of the whole steak we have 80% left over. It's an odd example because I would order a steak that was already trimmed and ready to go, so my yield would be 100%. But anytime you talk about yield, it's talking about the usable amount of a product that we have. So we bring it in, we figure out what the portion factor is, and basically there we take whatever we're going to use and we divide it into 16, which is 16 ounces a pound. If we're doing ounces, it would be different if we did eaches. Once we do that, we figure out what the portion divider is, and to get that portion divider, we basically once again divide the portion factor into the number of steaks or number of servings that we're going to need, and then it's going to turn around and tell us how many pounds or ounces of steak we need. Now, it seems very complicated, and it's one of those things people have a hard time grasping. In the situation in the book, for example, when it comes to steaks, potatoes, green beans, I would just do the steaks by the each. It's so much simpler. But when it comes to things like the sides, where how many potatoes do I need to order to feed those 500 people, we could make it simpler. We could say if we're going to give a 4-ounce portion of potatoes, we multiply that times 500. So I need 2,000 ounces of potatoes divided by 16, whatever that is, and that's how many potatoes I should order. You still have to figure in, if I'm going to do fresh potatoes, I'm going to trim them. So I am going to have a yield issue. Am I going to have 100% usage? Depending on what product you buy, I could be using instant potatoes where I do have 100% yield, or a frozen mashed potato, or an already peeled potato. But there are simpler ways to go than the Leveson approach. Don't get too bogged down with it. It's a good thing to understand, but as far as daily use, it's probably not something you're going to use. All right, it's better to be able to understand what yields of different products are, and to be able to understand the patterns of how much people are eating, so you know how much to order then. Because once you understand how much you're consuming or how much you're going through, the rest is pretty simple. Now, we can take this one step further than the Leveson approach. We can go the theoretical approach of ordering the right amount. Now there, we have a few other things to add in. And this is really only done for really big operations, big hotels, multi-unit franchises and the such. And there we have to look at a few other factors. Things that go into cost of purchasing that we didn't really look at before. Things such as storage cost or carrying cost, insurance cost. If I order a whole bunch of something, say I get what we call an opportunity buy, which we're going to talk about later, and I get the chance to buy a ton of chicken at an exceptionally low price. Sounds great, but now I got to figure out, where do I store it? Do I have to rent a place to store it? Is it going to take up all the available room I would have for other things that I need to store? So we have to look at these storage costs as an issue. Do I need extra security to watch over this stuff? What if I don't sell all of it and it starts to go bad? So I have spoilage losses. So storage cost is something we have to figure in. Ordering cost. What does it cost to order? I'm going to pay somebody to do this order. I've got to pay for phone, for fax, for computer. All these things have to be figured in somewhere. Now, we don't do this on mom and pop operations, do we? There's just not enough time. But big corporations where every penny counts, you see these factors figured in. Capital costs. This is one where we're saying the cost of money. What could I have used that money for? Instead of buying all this bulk chicken, what if I bought a smaller amount of chicken and took that extra money and did something with it? Well, that's the capital cost. What else could we do with that money instead of putting it into this product? Opportunity cost, and kind of tied in with capital cost, the opportunity of lost money. What else could I have done with that money instead of what I did with it? So for a theoretical approach, we're going to add in all those other factors. You can see why purchasing agents and big companies actually get paid pretty well, because it's not a simple when you get to these larger operations. You think it might be tough every week, and I see people struggle. Oh, we forgot to order this week. We don't have enough milk this week. I think we're going to be short on eggs. Imagine if you are the purchasing director for a very large company such as John Q. Hammons. John Q. Hammons, give me just a second here. John Q. Hammons up in Springfield, Missouri is about the 7th largest hotel chain in the country. You imagine being the purchasing agent for John Q. Hammons and having the responsibility to purchase for 400 hotels and different operations around the country? That is pressure. And that's why they try to be as precise as they can. They'll use the Levinson model, they'll use a theoretical approach where they add in all these other factors, because there a few pennies difference can mean the difference between a business being successful and a business not being successful. So, another factor with this that goes into ordering the proper amounts, we've got to look at ordering at the right time. And when is the right time to order? Some people will tell you, when I run out, I order more. Other people say, running out is the worst thing you can do, so I want to have as much on hand as I can. Once again, that gets into those other issues of, am I losing money by having things sit here? So, a couple things to think about. One thing we'll have is we call a safety stock. And a safety stock is the amount that, when we hit that safety stock amount, that's when we order. Now, it could go back to, you want to make sure that you always have 2 days over what you might sell as your safety stock. Some people might want more, some people might want less. It's also going to depend on the product. If I'm buying fresh fish for my restaurant, do I really want to stockpile fresh fish? No. I want to get just enough fish that I have just enough to get through, or even run out. I would rather be able to run out of the fresh fish than hold something over and have a poor quality. So, once again, that might go back to your whole mission and how you want to run your restaurant, but that's how I would do it there. When you hit down to the number that you want, we call that the reorder point. Alright, now, if I was going to do this in a small mom and pop place, when I do my inventory sheet, what I would do is I would put my PAR on there. I would have a column for inventory. And that PAR you might also call the, right next to it is the reorder point. So you've got your PAR, what I'd like to have on hand, your inventory, what you actually do have on hand, then another column over would be a number with a reorder point. So when those two numbers, the inventory on hand subtracted from the PAR equals the reorder point, boom, then you reorder. So you have to think about time on some of these things too when I'm going to reorder. For example, we buy a small plastic plate here for the cafe. It's just a plain old round plastic plate, but from a manufacturer that this company does not stock on a regular basis, the company we buy from. They stock the 9-inch plate, but not the 6-inch. So for that, I have to special order it. When special ordering, it takes almost a month to get it here. So the lead time on ordering, I have to plan a whole month out. So I can't just figure out what I'm going to use this week. I've got to figure this week, next week, the week after that, and the week after that. I even take into account what happens if everyone else does that and the company is unable to fill the order right that week, or there's another week to go. So lead time, you've got to figure out how much time it's going to take to get that product to you. And that's the situation we deal with here. Another way people might order is what we call just-in-time. And just-in-time tries to ensure that you're going to run out of something right when the new one comes in. And wouldn't that be a perfect purchasing world? The last time, or when we take that last burger out, a whole bunch of ground beef miraculously appears, and we just start fresh again. That can be done in situations where the business is very static. In other words, it doesn't change very often. You're going to do X amount of orders every week. You've got your clientele, and that would be the perfect role for a purchasing agent. So the downsides, once again, of poor purchasing, first of all, too much product on the shelf. Too much product on the shelf could go bad. You have spoilage cost. It could be used for money to go to other things. The other side of that, stockouts. Nobody likes going to their favorite restaurant and being told, oh, we're out of that this week. There's nothing worse than saying, oh my gosh, I had this last week. I thought about this all week. I'm coming in for it this week, and they say, oh, we're out. That irritates customers. It's really bad for word of mouth when you told me to go into this restaurant because this thing was so good, and I went there and they were all out of it. Sometimes that's unavoidable, and there's ways to handle that. From a non-purchasing side, when that happens, you want to try to make a positive out of it. Here's an example. I went to the local barbecue place in town at 1.4 times. Each time I ordered brisket. They were out. The third time was, well, we had it, but then we left it out on the counter overnight and it went bad. And the fourth time it was out. And that was basically how it was explained to me each time. Rather than saying, we're so sorry, we've ran out of brisket this week. I apologize, but it is so popular because it is so amazingly good. My suggestion would be, why don't you call ahead and maybe we can make sure we reserve some for you next time? And that's how I would handle that situation. Turn it into a positive and then show you have a little bit of love for the customer rather than just saying, I'm sorry, we left it out on the counter overnight, we had to throw it out, which is an honestly true statement that was told to me. So, the other whole downside to this whole optimal amount is you're using a lot of assumptions, throughout the way. Yes, we're trying to forecast, we're trying to keep actual numbers, but still things happen. Items come in that don't meet your spec, items come in that you have to send back, influx of customers, the water tower goes out in town, you're the only place with potable water in town, so everybody comes in. Things happen, and they can change from week to week. So you just have to be prepared. Ultimately, trying to remember that you want to buy the best product you can at the best price and give your customers the best quality is your overriding factor when you're buying this. So that is chapter 9, the optimal amount. I said don't get bogged down too much on the math because it will make you crazy. Understand the concept of it. And we'll talk more later. Thanks. Have a good week. Bye.